The cold steel of the handcuffs bit into Lily Patterson's wrists as the stagecoach rumbled through the dusty Nevada landscape in the autumn of 1875. At 20 years old, Lily had never imagined she'd be sent west as punishment for a crime she didn't commit, her fate sealed by a judge who saw her deafness as a mark of deviance rather than the result of a childhood fever. The stagecoach hit a rut, jostling Lily against the wooden wall. She couldn't hear the curses of the other passengers, but she could feel their contemptuous stares. Her once fine dress was now wrinkled and stained from 3 days of travel, her honey blonde hair falling from its pins. The only possession she'd been allowed to keep was a small, worn book of hand signs tucked into her pocket, a gift from the nun who had taught her to communicate after she lost her hearing at age 8. Marshal Jenkins, a portly man with a bushy mustache, sat across from her, occasionally checking the papers that condemned her to 5 years of labor at Dawson's Ranch outside of Sweetwater Springs, Nevada. The town wasn't large enough to be on most maps, but it had a reputation for harsh conditions and harsher people. Lily's crime, according to the Boston court, was theft from the wealthy family that had employed her as a seamstress. In truth, the son of the house had taken a silver pocket watch and blamed it on the deaf girl when it was discovered missing. With no way to defend herself in court, no interpreter provided, and her written testimony dismissed, Lily had been convicted and sent west as part of a program to provide labor to the frontier. As the stagecoach crested a hill, the town of Sweetwater Springs came into view, a collection of wooden buildings straddling the main road, with mountains rising in the distance. Lily felt her stomach tighten. This desolate place would be her prison for the next 5 years. The stagecoach rolled to a stop outside the sheriff's office. Marshal Jenkins gripped Lily's arm and pulled her down onto the dusty street. The afternoon sun beat down on her neck as he marched her toward a weathered building with a sign that read, "Sheriff." Inside, a man with a silver star pinned to his vest looked up from his desk. Sheriff Tate was a lean, hard-looking man with a face creased by sun and wind. He barely glanced at Lily as he accepted her papers from the marshal. "Another one for Dawson's place?" he asked, his voice inaudible to Lily but his expression clear enough. The marshal nodded and pushed Lily forward. She stumbled, her legs stiff from the journey. Sheriff Tate signed the papers and handed a copy back to the marshal. "Dawson sent word he's running late. One of his hands will pick her up." The marshal tipped his hat and left without a backward glance at Lily. She stood there, uncertain, her bound hands in front of her. Sheriff Tate pointed to a bench against the wall and she sat, her back straight, her eyes down. She'd learned that looking too directly at people in authority often brought trouble. An hour passed. Lily's stomach growled with hunger, but she dared not gesture for food. The sheriff ignored her, attending to his paperwork and occasionally greeting townspeople who came in with questions or complaints. Finally, the door opened, and a tall man ducked under the frame. Lily looked up and found herself staring at the most striking man she'd ever seen. He was broad-shouldered and lean-hipped, with a face that seemed carved from the Nevada landscape, all planes and angles, weathered by sun and wind. His hair was the color of wheat under a black Stetson, and his eyes were the deep blue of a mountain lake. He wore a simple flannel shirt, faded denim trousers, and well-worn boots with spurs that would have jingled if Lily could have heard them. "Owen Hayes," the sheriff nodded. "Dawson sent you for the girl." Owen nodded, his eyes flickering to Lily. She read a moment of surprise in them, quickly masked. "This is her?" Owen asked, his voice a rumble that Lily couldn't hear but could almost feel in her chest. "Yep. Lily Patterson, deaf as a post according to the papers, stole from her employers back east." Judge sentenced her to 5 years labor at Dawson's place. Owen's expression darkened slightly. Dawson didn't mention she was deaf. That a problem? The sheriff raised an eyebrow. No, Owen said after a moment. No problem. He approached Lily, moving slowly as if not to startle her. He gestured for her to stand, then pointed to the handcuffs with a questioning look. Sheriff Tate tossed him a key. She's your responsibility now. Dawson knows the rules she tries to run. It's another 2 years added to her sentence. Owen nodded and carefully unlocked the handcuffs. Lily rubbed her wrists, the skin raw and reddened. Owen pointed to himself and mouthed slowly, "Owen." Lily nodded, understanding. She pointed to herself and mouthed, "Lily." Owen nodded and gestured toward the door. He led her outside where a wagon waited, a pair of sturdy horses in the traces. He helped her climb up onto the wooden seat, then went around and took his place beside her. As they pulled away from the sheriff's office, Lily stared straight ahead, her hands folded in her lap. She was exhausted, hungry, and terrified of what awaited her at Dawson's ranch. But she couldn't help noticing how carefully Owen handled the horses, how he kept a respectful distance between them on the seat, and how he occasionally glanced at her, with what seemed like concern rather than the contempt she'd grown used to seeing. For his part, Owen Hayes couldn't help but study the young woman beside him. When Dawson had told him to pick up a prisoner from the East who'd be working off her sentence at the ranch, he'd expected someone hardened, perhaps even dangerous. Instead, he found this slip of a girl with haunted eyes and the bearing of someone far more refined than a common thief. The wagon rolled out of town, past scattered homesteads and into the open rangeland. The Dawson Ranch lay 15 miles outside of town, a sprawling operation that ran cattle across thousands of acres. Jebediah Dawson was one of the territory's most successful ranchers, known for his shrewd business sense and his harsh treatment of those who worked for him, especially those who came as part of the prison labor program. As the wagon jostled along the rutted trail, Lily's stomach growled audibly. Owen noticed and reached behind the seat, pulling out a cloth-wrapped package. He unwrapped it to reveal a biscuit and a strip of jerky which he offered to her. Lily hesitated, then took the food with a small nod of thanks. She ate slowly, savoring each bite. It had been a day since her last meal, a hard biscuit and weak coffee at a way station. Owen watched her eat, his brow furrowed. She was too thin, her wrists like bird bones when he'd unlocked the handcuffs. Whatever she'd done to end up here, she didn't look like someone who deserved Dawson's brand of justice. As they traveled, the landscape opened up rolling hills covered with sage and occasional stands of juniper, with mountains rising blue in the distance. In other circumstances, Lily might have found it beautiful. Now, it just seemed like an endless, alien prison. After about an hour, the wagon crested a hill, and Dawson's ranch came into view below a collection of buildings centered around a large 2-story house, with corrals, a barn, bunkhouses, and various outbuildings spread around it. Cattle grazed in the distance and cowboys on horseback moved among them. Lily felt her heart sink. The place was even more isolated than she'd feared. Owen slowed the wagon and reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small notebook and pencil, scribbled something, and handed it to her. "Dawson is hard but fair," the note read. "Keep your head down, do your work, stay out of his way." Lily read it and looked at Owen, a question in her eyes. He took back the notebook and wrote again, "I'll help if I can." Lily wasn't sure why this cowboy would offer help to a convicted thief, but she nodded gratefully. As they approached the ranch, she straightened her back and lifted her chin. Whatever awaited her here, she would face it with dignity. The wagon rolled into the ranch yard, and several workers looked up from their tasks. Owen pulled the horses to a stop in front of the main house, a substantial structure built of logs and stone. He jumped down and came around to help Lily, offering his hand. She hesitated, then took it, feeling the calluses on his palm as he helped her down. The front door opened, and a man stepped out onto the porch. Jebediah Dawson was in his 50s, barrel-chested and imposing with iron-gray hair and cold eyes. He looked Lily up and down with a calculating gaze that made her want to shrink into herself. "This is the one from back east?" he asked Owen, his mouth moving slowly enough that Lily could read his lips. "Yes, sir," Owen replied. "Lily Patterson." "She doesn't look strong enough to be much use," Dawson frowned. "And deaf, too. What am I supposed to do with that?" Owen's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. "She seems smart, sir. Might be good for housework." Dawson grunted. "My wife could use help with the cooking and cleaning, I suppose." He fixed Lily with a hard stare. "You understand me, girl. You can read lips." Lily nodded, meeting his gaze despite her fear. "Good. You'll work for Mrs. Dawson in the house. You'll sleep in the back room off the kitchen. You try to run. I'll have the sheriff on you before you get 5 miles, and you'll serve double your time. You steal anything from me or mine, I'll have you in a territorial prison so fast your head will spin. Understand?" Lily nodded again, clasping her hands to keep them from trembling. "Owen, take her to Martha. Tell her she's got help for the next 5 years, assuming this one doesn't prove useless." Dawson turned and went back into the house without another word. Owen gave Lily a reassuring nod and led her around to the back of the house, where a kitchen door stood open. Inside, a woman in her 40s stood at a large cook stove, her face flushed from the heat. Martha Dawson was a thin, tired-looking woman with streaks of gray in her dark hair and lines of worry around her eyes. She looked up as they entered, wiping her hands on her apron. "This is the girl from back east?" she asked. Owen nodded. "Lily Patterson, madam. She's deaf but can read lips if you speak clearly." Martha studied Lily with more kindness than her husband had shown. "Well, girl, can you cook, clean?" "So," Lily nodded to all three, relief washing through her. Kitchen work would be far better than the field labor she had feared. "Good, I can use the help. Heaven knows there's enough work here for 3 women. She turned to Owen. "Thank you for bringing her, Mr. Hayes. I'll take her from here." Owen hesitated, looking at Lily. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a silent promise of some kind. Then he nodded to Mrs. Dawson and left, his spurs making sounds Lily couldn't hear as he walked across the wooden floor. Martha Dawson showed Lily to a small room off the kitchen. It contained a narrow bed, a washstand, and a hook on the wall for clothes. It was plain but clean, with a small window that looked out toward the mountains. "It's not much," Martha said, speaking slowly so Lily could read her lips, "but it's private. The men aren't allowed in the house except for meals, so you'll be safe enough here." Lily nodded gratefully. After days of travel under the watchful eye of the marshal, the prospect of privacy even in this small room was a blessing. Martha opened a trunk at the foot of the bed. "There are some work dresses in here that might fit you. They belong to a girl who worked here before. You can wash up at the pump out back, then change and help me get supper ready. The men will be coming in hungry in about 2 hours." Lily nodded again, understanding her instructions. Martha paused at the door. "I don't know what you did to end up here, girl, and I don't much care. Do your work, stay out of Jebediah's way, and we'll get along fine." With that, she left Lily alone. For the first time in days, Lily allowed herself to sit on the edge of the bed and let a few tears fall. She was far from home, condemned to years of servitude for a crime she hadn't committed, her deafness a wall between her and everyone around her. But at least she had a roof over her head, would have regular meals, and wouldn't be subjected to the leering eyes of guards or fellow prisoners. And there had been something in Owen Hayes's eyes, a kindness, a decency that gave her a fragile thread of hope to cling to in this strange, silent wilderness. After washing at the pump behind the house, feeling the cold water like a shock against her skin, Lily changed into one of the dresses from the trunk. It was plain calico, a bit loose on her frame, but clean and serviceable. She twisted her hair into a simple knot at the nape of her neck and returned to the kitchen, ready to work. Martha set her to peeling potatoes and cutting vegetables for a stew. The work was familiar. Lily had helped in kitchens since she was a child, and she fell into the rhythm of it gratefully. Martha seemed pleased with her efficiency, nodding approval as Lily moved smoothly through the tasks assigned to her. As the afternoon waned toward evening, cowboys began streaming in from the range, washing up at the pump where Lily had cleaned herself earlier. Through the window, she could see them laughing and jostling one another, their mouths moving in conversation she couldn't hear. Her eyes searched for, and found Owen among them, taller than most, more reserved in his manner, watching the others with a slight distance that made her wonder about his story. When the food was ready, Martha rang a large bell that hung outside the kitchen door. Lily couldn't hear it, but she could feel the vibration through the floor. The men filed into the dining room, a long space with 2 tables that could seat 20 men in total. They took their places noisily, their boots scraping on the wooden floor. Jebediah Dawson sat at the head of the main table, with Martha at the foot. The foreman, a grizzled man named Curtis, sat at the head of the second table. Owen took a place halfway down, keeping his eyes on his plate as Lily and Martha brought out platters of food. Lily kept her gaze lowered as she served, conscious of the men's curious looks. News of her arrival and her deafness had clearly spread through the ranch. Some looked at her with pity, others with suspicion, and a few with the predatory interest that always made her skin crawl. But when she placed a platter of cornbread near Owen, he looked up and gave her a small nod of thanks, his eyes kind in a way that momentarily steadied her. The meal progressed with the noisy enthusiasm of hungry men eating hearty food after a day's hard work. Lily moved efficiently between kitchen and dining room, refilling coffee cups and bringing more food as needed. Though she couldn't hear the conversations, she could read the general mood, relaxed after a day's labor, with the easy camaraderie of men who worked closely together. After the meal, while the men lingered over coffee and the last pieces of Martha's apple pie, Lily began clearing the tables. As she reached for a plate near Owen, he surprised her by sliding his notebook toward her. On it, he had written, "You did well today." Lily glanced around nervously, but no one was paying attention to them. She gave him a quick, grateful smile and continued her work. Later, as she washed dishes in the kitchen while Martha put away the leftover food, Lily thought about that small interaction. Why would a cowboy like Owen Hayes take the time to reassure a convicted thief? Perhaps he simply pitied her. Or perhaps he saw what few others bothered to see, that she was more than her deafness, more than the crime she'd been accused of. That night, exhausted from travel and work, Lily fell into the narrow bed in her small room. Despite her fatigue, sleep came fitfully. The bed was unfamiliar, the night sounds of the ranch inaudible to her, but somehow still sensed as vibrations through the wooden structure of the house. And her mind kept returning to Owen Hayes, to the unexpected kindness in his blue eyes, to the careful way he had written those simple words of encouragement. Little did she know that just 100 yards away, in the bunkhouse where the cowboys slept, Owen Hayes was equally restless, thinking about the delicate young woman with haunted eyes who had arrived at Dawson's ranch that day. Something about her didn't fit with the story Dawson had told, that she was a thief sent west as punishment. Her hands were too refined for common labor, her bearing too dignified for someone raised without advantages. Owen had seen his share of hardship and injustice in his 32 years. Orphaned young, he'd made his way west at 18, working ranches from Texas to Montana before settling in Nevada 5 years ago. He'd learned to keep to himself, to do his job well, and to stay out of trouble. But something about Lily Patterson stirred a protective instinct he'd thought long buried. As he drifted toward sleep, he made a silent promise to himself he would find a way to communicate with her properly, to learn her story, and perhaps, if he could, to make her life at Dawson's ranch a little less harsh than it might otherwise be. The next morning came early at Dawson's ranch. Lily was awakened by Martha gently shaking her shoulder as the first gray light of dawn filtered through her small window. She dressed quickly in another of the work dresses and joined Martha in the kitchen, helping to prepare breakfast for the ranch hands. The men ate quickly, eager to get to their day's work. Lily noticed that Owen wasn't among them and felt a small pang of disappointment. She had hoped to see him, perhaps to receive another of his written notes. After breakfast, as Lily was washing dishes, Martha tapped her shoulder. When Lily looked up, Martha pointed out the window. Owen was there, leading a horse toward the house. He had a coil of rope over his shoulder and seemed to be waiting for something. Martha made a shooing motion. "Mr. Dawson wants you to learn to milk the cows," she said, speaking slowly for Lily to read her lips. "Owen will show you. Be quick about it and get back to help with the bread." Lily dried her hands on her apron, nervous about this unexpected change in routine. She had never been around livestock before coming west. Outside, the morning air was crisp with autumn. Owen nodded a greeting, then pointed to the horse, a gentle-looking mare with a reddish coat. He mimed mounting it, then pointed to Lily, raising his eyebrows in question. Lily shook her head, fear evident in her eyes. She had never ridden a horse in her life. Owen nodded, understanding. He scribbled in his notebook, "We'll walk. Dairy Barn is half-mile. You can learn to ride another time." They set off, the horse following obediently behind Owen as they walked a well-worn path that curved around a hill behind the main ranch buildings. Owen kept a respectful distance, but Lily was acutely aware of his presence, the confident stride, the easy way he moved, the occasional glances he cast her way. After about 10 minutes, they reached a small barn nestled against the hillside. Inside were 6 dairy cows in stalls, regarding them with placid eyes as they chewed their cud. Owen tied the horse outside and led Lily into the barn. He pointed to the cows, then made a milking motion with his hands. Lily nodded, understanding, though she'd never milked a cow before either. Owen scribbled in his notebook again, "I'll show you, then you try." He led her to a stall where a black and white cow stood patiently. He patted the cow's flank, speaking to it in what Lily imagined were soothing tones. Then he positioned a 3-legged stool beside the cow, placed a bucket under her udder, and sat down to demonstrate. Lily watched carefully as Owen's strong hands worked with surprising gentleness, establishing a rhythm that soon had milk streaming into the bucket. After a minute, he stood and gestured for Lily to try. Nervously, she took his place on the stool. The cow turned her head to regard Lily with liquid brown eyes, then returned to her hay. Lily hesitantly reached for the udder, mimicking Owen's motions. Her first attempts produced only a few drops, and she looked up apologetically. Owen knelt beside her, his expression patient. Slowly, he reached for her hands, looking at her with a question in his eyes, asking permission to guide her. Lily nodded, and he gently positioned her hands correctly, demonstrating the proper pressure and rhythm again. The warmth of his hands over hers sent an unexpected shiver through Lily. No man had ever touched her with such care, such respect. His fingers were calloused from ranch work, but moved with surprising delicacy as he guided her through the motions. After a moment, milk began to stream steadily into the bucket. Owen withdrew his hands, nodding approval as Lily continued on her own. She couldn't help the small, proud smile that curved her lips when she successfully finished milking her first cow. For the next hour, Owen taught Lily to milk the remaining cows. By the sixth, she had developed a comfortable rhythm and confidence in the task. Owen watched her with evident approval, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. When they had finished, carrying several buckets of fresh milk, Owen scribbled another note. "You learn quick. Good hands." Lily felt a flush of pleasure at the simple compliment. As they walked back toward the main ranch, the morning sun warming their backs, she found herself stealing glances at this quiet cowboy, who had shown her more kindness in one morning than she'd experienced in months. Back at the ranch house, Lily returned to her kitchen duties, helping Martha prepare bread dough for baking. As she kneaded the heavy mass, feeling the dough become smooth and elastic under her hands, her mind kept returning to the feel of Owen's hands guiding hers, the patient way he'd taught her, the approval in his eyes when she succeeded. For the first time since her arrest, Lily felt something other than fear and despair. It was a fragile, tentative feeling, perhaps not quite hope, but a step toward it. In this strange, silent world of Dawson's Ranch, she had found one person who seemed to see her as something more than a burden, a criminal, or a curiosity, because of her deafness. That afternoon, as Lily hung laundry on the line behind the house, she spotted Owen working with several other cowboys in a corral nearby. They were training young horses, taking turns riding animals that bucked and twisted in protest of the saddles on their backs. Even from a distance, Lily could see that Owen's technique differed from the others. Where some cowboys seemed to battle the horses, using force and fear, Owen appeared to work with them, his movements firm but not cruel, his patience evident even when thrown to the ground. One horse in particular, a spirited black stallion, seemed especially resistant. After two cowboys had been thrown, cursing and dusting themselves off, Owen stepped forward. Lily paused in her work, a wet sheet forgotten in her hands as she watched him approach the snorting, wild-eyed animal. Owen moved slowly, talking to the horse in what Lily imagined was a steady, calm voice. He stood at the corral fence for several minutes, just letting the horse become accustomed to his presence. Then he entered the corral with deliberate steps, never rushing, never making sudden movements. The horse pawed the ground, tossing its head, but Owen continued his patient approach. When he finally touched the animal's neck, it was with a gentle hand that stroked downward in long, soothing motions. Gradually, the horse's tension eased. After several minutes, Owen was able to adjust the saddle, checking the cinch with careful hands. When he finally mounted, the horse still bucked and twisted, but with less desperation than before. Owen rode out the stallion's protests, his body moving in rhythm with the animal rather than fighting against it. Eventually, the horse began to respond to Owen's guidance, running in circles around the corral, gradually accepting the bit and saddle. Lily watched, transfixed, only remembering her laundry when Martha called her from the kitchen door. As she hurried back to her duties, she couldn't help thinking that Owen Hayes approached both horses and deaf women with the same patient kindness, a rare quality in a world that often valued strength over gentleness. That evening, as Lily served dinner, she noticed Owen watching her with a thoughtful expression. When she cleared his plate, he slipped her another note. "Can you meet me at the dairy barn at sunrise? I have something for you." Lily read the note, her heart beating faster. She should refuse meeting a man alone could only lead to trouble. Yet something in Owen's steady gaze told her she could trust him. She gave a small nod before continuing her work, tucking the note into her pocket where Martha wouldn't see it. That night, Lily slept fitfully, anticipation and anxiety warring in her mind. What could Owen possibly have for her? And why did the prospect of seeing him alone make her pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with fear? She rose before dawn, dressing quietly in the darkness. Martha wouldn't be up for another half hour, giving Lily time to slip out to the dairy barn and back before her absence was noticed. The ranch was quiet as Lily made her way along the path she and Owen had walked the previous day. The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten, the stars fading as the first hint of dawn approached. The air was cold enough to make her breath visible, and she pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. The dairy barn was dark except for a faint glow from a lantern inside. Lily hesitated at the door, suddenly nervous. Then she squared her shoulders and pushed it open. Owen stood by one of the stalls, the lantern casting his tall figure in dramatic shadows against the barn wall. When he saw her, his face lit with a smile that transformed his serious features. He gestured for her to come in, then reached for something on a barrel beside him. It was a book small and worn with a leather cover that had seen better days. He handed it to Lily, who took it with curiosity. When she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. It was a book of hand signs similar to the one she'd brought with her, but more comprehensive. The pages were filled with illustrations showing hand positions for different words and concepts, with explanations written beside them. Lily looked up at Owen, question and wonder in her eyes. He smiled and raised his hands, slowly forming the signs for good morning. Tears sprang to Lily's eyes. He had learned signs for her. No one since the nun who taught her had ever bothered to learn her language. Owen reached for his notebook and wrote, "Found it in town yesterday. Been studying all night. Want to learn to talk with you properly." Lily clutched the book to her chest, overcome with emotion. After months of isolation, of being treated as less than human because she couldn't hear, here was someone willing to step into her silent world. With trembling hands, she signed "Thank you," one of the first signs she had learned as a child. Owen watched her hands carefully, then mimicked the sign, his large, calloused fingers moving with surprising grace. When Lily nodded that he had done it correctly, his smile broadened with genuine pleasure. He wrote again, "Can teach me. Little every day." Lily nodded eagerly, wiping away the tears that threatened to spill onto her cheeks. For the next 20 minutes, she taught Owen basic signs: hello, please, yes, no, thank you, watching as he practiced each one with careful concentration. His dedication to learning her language touched something deep inside her, a place that had been cold and numb for too long. As the light outside grew stronger, signaling the start of the ranch day, Owen reluctantly wrote, "Must go. Same time tomorrow." Lily nodded, reluctant to end this magical interlude but knowing they both had duties to attend to. As she turned to leave, Owen touched her arm gently. When she looked back, he signed "friend," one of the words she had just taught him. Lily smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes for the first time since arriving at Dawson's ranch. She signed "friend" in return, then hurried back to the house, the precious book clutched against her chest like a talisman. She slipped into the kitchen just as Martha was coming down from her bedroom, managing to look as though she'd been there all along, starting the fire in the cookstove. If Martha noticed Lily's flushed cheeks or the light in her eyes, she didn't comment on it. The day passed in a blur of work: cooking, cleaning, laundry, helping Martha preserve the last of the garden's harvest for winter. But beneath the routine tasks, Lily felt a current of excitement, a secret joy that sustained her through the long hours. That evening, as she served dinner, She noticed Owen signing "thank you" when she placed his plate before him. He did it subtly, keeping his hands low where the other men wouldn't notice, but the gesture warmed Lily's heart. Their secret language, their private connection, felt like a small rebellion against the isolation imposed by her deafness and her status as a prisoner. The next morning, Lily again rose before dawn to meet Owen at the dairy barn. This time, he was waiting with the book open, having practiced the signs they had worked on the previous day. After reviewing those, Lily taught him more signs for common objects around the ranch, for actions like work and ride, for feelings like happy and sad. Owen proved to be a quick study, his hands growing more confident with each sign. As they worked together in the lantern light, Lily found herself noticing details about him she hadn't before: the way one corner of his mouth lifted higher than the other when he smiled, the tiny scar that bisected his left eyebrow, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he concentrated. When they finished their lesson, Owen surprised her by signing a complete sentence: "You teach well." Lily's heart swelled with pride both at his progress and at the compliment. She signed back, "You learn fast." Before they parted, Owen wrote in his notebook, "Meet after dinner by the big cottonwood tree behind the bunkhouse. I can practice more signs." Lily hesitated, knowing that meeting a man at night would be viewed with suspicion if discovered. But the chance to spend more time with Owen, to continue building this bridge between their worlds, was too tempting to refuse. She nodded her agreement. Throughout the day, anticipation thrummed in Lily's veins like a physical current. She moved through her tasks with an efficiency born of long practice. But her mind was elsewhere, in a dairy barn at dawn, with a cowboy whose gentle hands were learning to speak her language. After dinner, when the dishes were done and Martha had retired to her room with a novel, Lily slipped out the back door. The night was clear, stars scattered like diamond dust across the velvet sky. A 3/4 moon provided enough light for her to find her way to the massive cottonwood tree that stood as a landmark behind the bunkhouse. Owen was already waiting, a lantern at his feet casting a small circle of golden light. He smiled when he saw her, signing "hello" with growing confidence. They sat on a fallen log beneath the spreading branches of the cottonwood, the book open between them. For the next hour, Owen practiced his signs while Lily corrected and encouraged him. Their hands sometimes touched as she adjusted his fingers into the proper positions, each contact sending a flutter through her chest that she tried to ignore. As their lesson progressed, Owen began asking questions about Lily's life before coming to Nevada. Through a combination of signs and written notes, she told him about losing her hearing to scarlet fever at age 8, about the nun who had taught her to communicate with her hands, about her work as a seamstress in Boston. When Owen asked about the crime that had sent her west, Lily hesitated. Then slowly, she signed and mimed the story: the missing watch, the son of the house blaming her, the court that wouldn't provide an interpreter or consider her written testimony. As understanding dawned on Owen's face, his expression hardened with anger. He wrote fiercely in his notebook, "You're innocent, you shouldn't be here." Lily shrugged sadly, signing, "No one believed me." Owen's jaw tightened as he wrote, "I believe you." Those 3 simple words, written in Owen's strong, angular handwriting, nearly undid Lily. She looked away, blinking back tears, overwhelmed by the first real vindication she'd received since her accusation and conviction. When she had composed herself, she turned the conversation to Owen, curious about the man who had so unexpectedly championed her. Through signs, writing, and gestures, he told her his story: his parents' death from influenza when he was 12, his years working cattle drives across the West, his arrival at Dawson's ranch 5 years earlier. "Why did you stay here?" Lily signed, curious about why a man like Owen would remain under the employ of a hard man like Jebediah Dawson. Owen hesitated, then wrote, "Saving to buy my own place. Small, spread about 20 miles north, making payments to the bank. Another year, maybe less, it will be mine." Lily nodded, understanding. Owen had a dream, a goal that kept him enduring Dawson's regime. She admired his determination, his patience in working towards something that mattered to him. As the hour grew late, Owen reluctantly signed that they should return before they were missed. But before they parted, he wrote one more note. "We'll learn more signs every day. Want to speak to you in your language, properly." Lily smiled, touched by his commitment. She signed "Good night" and "Thank you," adding the sign for friend with special emphasis. Owen watched her hands, then signed back "Good night" and "Friend," adding another sign she hadn't taught him, touching his closed fist to his chest in a circular motion. Lily recognized it immediately, the sign for sorry. She tilted her head, questioning. Owen wrote, "Sorry for what happened to you. Sorry the world is unfair." Lily felt tears threaten again. She touched his arm briefly in acknowledgement, then turned and hurried back to the house, her heart full of emotions she wasn't ready to name. Over the next weeks, as autumn deepened toward winter, Owen and Lily continued their clandestine meetings in the dairy barn at dawn, by the cottonwood tree after dinner when weather permitted, occasionally in the tack room of the main barn on days when Lily's duties took her there. Each meeting strengthened Owen's grasp of sign language, and each meeting deepened the connection between them. Owen proved to be a dedicated student, practicing his signs even when they weren't together. Lily would catch glimpses of him signing to himself as he worked around the ranch, his hands moving in the private language that was becoming their bridge. By the time the first snow fell in late November, Owen could carry on basic conversations in sign language. His hands, so skilled with horses and ranch work, had developed a fluency that amazed Lily. Where once they had relied heavily on written notes, now they could communicate directly, their hands speaking what their voices could not. The change in Owen was noticed by the other ranch hands, who sometimes caught him signing to himself as he worked. Most dismissed it as an odd habit, but a few made jokes about Hayes talking to ghosts. Owen bore their ribbing stoically, never explaining his new skill. Only Curtis, the foreman, seemed to suspect the truth, his shrewd eyes moving between Owen and Lily when they were in the same room, noting the careful way they avoided looking at each other too much in public. Martha Dawson, too, had begun to notice changes in Lily, a brightness in her eyes that hadn't been there before, a lightness in her step, despite the long hours of work. She said nothing, but sometimes Lily would catch Martha watching her with a knowing expression that made her wonder how much the older woman had guessed. As for Jebediah Dawson, he paid little attention to Lily, beyond ensuring that his meals were served promptly and his house kept clean. Her deafness made her largely invisible to him, a condition that Lily had come to see as an advantage rather than a liability. One evening in early December, Owen met Lily by the cottonwood tree, his breath visible in the cold air. Snow blanketed the ground, and the bare branches of the tree were outlined in white. Owen had brought an extra blanket, which he wrapped around Lily's shoulders before they sat on their usual log, now cleared of snow. Their conversation that night flowed easily in sign language, their hands moving gracefully in the lantern light. Owen told her about his day breaking ice on the stock ponds, about a new colt born despite the cold, about his hopes for his own ranch come spring. Then, with hands that trembled slightly, he signed something new. "I think about you all day, when we're not together." Lily's breath caught. They had carefully maintained the fiction of friendship, never acknowledging the growing attraction between them. Now, with those signed words, Owen had crossed the invisible boundary. Lily hesitated, her hand still in her lap. Owen watched her face anxiously, clearly wondering if he had made a terrible mistake. Finally, she raised her hands and signed. "I think about you too, all the time." The relief and joy that transformed Owen's face made Lily's heart race. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he reached for her hand. When she didn't retreat, he laced his fingers through hers, the first intimate touch they had shared. They sat there in the cold December night, holding hands beneath the star-strewn sky, neither wanting to break the spell of the moment. Finally, Owen signed one-handed, not willing to release his hold on her. "May I kiss you?" Lily nodded, her heart pounding so hard she was sure Owen must feel it through their clasped hands. He leaned forward slowly, his eyes holding hers until the last moment when they drifted closed. His lips touched hers gently, a question rather than a demand. Lily had never been kissed before. The sensation was overwhelming, the warmth of Owen's mouth against hers in the cold night air, the slight roughness of his unshaven cheek, the tenderness in the way he cradled her face with his free hand. When they parted, Owen's eyes were filled with a mixture of wonder and desire that made Lily tremble. He signed, "I've wanted to do that since the first day I saw you." Lily smiled and signed back, "I'm glad you waited until I could understand you say it." Owen laughed, a sound Lily couldn't hear but could feel in the way his shoulders shook and his eyes crinkled at the corners. He leaned in to kiss her again, more confidently this time, his hand sliding to the nape of her neck beneath her heavy hair. When they finally separated, both breathless and flushed despite the cold, Owen signed with serious eyes, "This is dangerous. If Dawson finds out." Lily nodded, understanding the risk. She was technically a prisoner, her status little better than indentured servitude. Owen was an employee who could be dismissed without cause or reference, and in the isolated world of the ranch, Dawson's word was law. She signed back, "Worth the danger, for me." Owen's expression softened and he touched her cheek gently. "Worth everything," he signed. "For me too." As winter deepened, Owen and Lily continued their secret meetings, their connection growing stronger with each encounter. They stole moments together whenever they could. Dawn rendezvous at the dairy barn, evenings by the cottonwood when weather permitted, brief exchanges in the tack room or barn when Lily's duties brought her there. Owen's facility with sign language improved daily until he could express complex thoughts and emotions with his hands. For Lily, who had lived so long in isolation because of her deafness, having someone who could truly communicate with her was like water to parched earth. She bloomed under Owen's attention, her natural grace and intelligence emerging from behind the protective shell she had built around herself. Their feelings for each other deepened from attraction to something more profound. They shared dreams, fears, memories, building a foundation of understanding and respect beneath their growing passion. Each kiss, each touch, each moment together became precious, hoarded against the long hours of separation. But as with all secrets on a ranch where people lived in close quarters and had little privacy, theirs eventually began to be suspected. Curtis, the foreman, watched them with increasingly narrowed eyes. Several of the cowboys noticed Owen's frequent absences at dawn and his tendency to disappear after dinner. Martha Dawson said nothing, but the knowing look in her eyes when she watched Lily suggested she had guessed at least part of the truth. The inevitable confrontation came in late January, during a bitter cold snap that had everyone on edge. Lily was returning from the henhouse, a basket of eggs in her arms, when she saw Owen and Curtis in what appeared to be a heated argument by the barn. From their gestures and expressions, she could tell the conversation was serious, and when Owen glanced her way with worry in his eyes, she knew it was about her. That evening, Owen didn't come to their usual meeting place. Lily waited by the cottonwood until her feet were numb with cold, then returned to the house, sick with worry. Had Curtis reported their relationship to Dawson? Had Owen been fired? Or worse, had he decided the risk was too great and chosen to end things between them? She passed a sleepless night, her mind spinning with anxious scenarios. The next morning, as she helped Martha prepare breakfast, she kept glancing out the window, searching for any sign of Owen among the cowboys heading to the barn. She didn't see him until breakfast was served. He came in late, his face tight with tension. As she served coffee, he carefully kept his eyes averted, giving no sign of their connection. Lily's heart sank. Whatever had happened with Curtis, Owen was now avoiding her. After breakfast, as she cleared the tables, she felt a brush against her apron pocket. When she checked, she found a folded note. With shaking hands, she slipped it into her dress pocket, waiting until she was alone in the pantry to read it. "Meet me at noon in the old line shack at the north pasture," the note read. "Important. Tell Martha you need herbs from the hillside." Lily's worry deepened. The line shack was over a mile from the main ranch buildings, farther than they had ever risked meeting before. Whatever Owen needed to discuss, it was serious enough to warrant this dangerous rendezvous. At noon, having convinced Martha she needed to gather winter herbs from a protected slope near the line shack, Lily made her way across the snow-covered pasture. The day was clear but bitterly cold, the snow squeaking beneath her boots as she followed a path trodden by cattle and cowboys. The line shack was a simple one-room structure, built as shelter for cowboys working the distant pastures. In winter, it was rarely used except in emergencies. Smoke rose from its chimney as Lily approached, indicating Owen was already there. He opened the door before she could knock, pulling her inside and into his arms in one swift movement. He held her tightly for a long moment, his face buried in her hair, then stepped back to sign. "Missed you last night. Couldn't come. Curtis suspects." Lily nodded, relieved that Owen hadn't been avoiding her by choice. "What happened?" she signed. Owen's expression darkened. "Curtis saw us together by the cottonwood, warned me to stay away from you, said you're Dawson's property until your sentence is served." Anger flashed in Lily's eyes at being referred to as property. She signed furiously. "I'm a person, not a thing to be owned." "I know," Owen signed, his face reflecting her outrage. "Curtis threatened to tell Dawson if he sees us together again." "What can we do?" Lily asked, fear replacing anger. If Dawson learned of their relationship, the consequences could be severe for both of them. Owen took a deep breath, then signed words that stopped Lily's heart. "Marry me." She stared at him, certain she had misunderstood. Owen continued, his hands moving with passionate intensity. "I love you, Lily. Have since almost the first moment. Want to take you away from here, to my own place. Build a life together." Tears filled Lily's eyes as the full impact of his words hit her. "But my sentence," she signed. 4.5 more years. Dawson won't let me go." Owen's jaw set in a determined line as he signed. "There's a judge in Carson City, honest man. If we tell him your story, show him you were convicted without proper means to defend yourself because of your deafness. There's a chance, Lily. A chance to appeal your sentence." Hope bloomed in Lily's chest, fragile but real. "When?" she signed. "Spring," Owen replied. "When the passes are clear. My place will be ready by then. We can be married before we go to Carson City or after. Your choice." Lily's mind raced. What Owen proposed was risky, defying Dawson, challenging a legal sentence, starting a life together in a territory where neither of them had family or powerful connections. Yet the alternative years more of servitude, of hiding their relationship, of stolen moments in the shadows was unthinkable now that she had glimpsed a possibility of freedom. She looked into Owen's eyes, seeing the love and determination there, and made her decision. "Yes," she signed. "I'll marry you." Owen's face transformed with joy. He gathered her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that left her breathless. When they finally separated, he signed, "We must be careful until spring. Meet less often, different places. Can't risk Curtis telling Dawson." Lily nodded, understanding the necessity but already mourning the loss of their regular meetings. 3 months, Owen signed, his eyes intense. "Just 3 months until the snow melts in the passes. Then we go, together." Lily signed her agreement, sealing the promise with another kiss before they reluctantly parted, Lily to gather the herbs that were her excuse for being out, Owen to return to his duties by a different path. As she made her way back to the ranch house, a basket of winter herbs in hand, Lily felt a strange mixture of emotions: fear at the risks ahead, exhilaration at the prospect of freedom, and above all, a deep, abiding love for the man who had learned her language and offered her a future she had thought impossible. The next 3 months were the hardest of Lily's life. Following Owen's warning, they met less frequently and in various locations around the ranch property: the hayloft, the abandoned smokehouse, once even in the root cellar beneath the kitchen when a blizzard made outside meetings impossible. Each meeting was briefer than their previous rendezvous, each parting more painful with the knowledge that discovery could ruin their plans. Curtis watched them both like a hawk, his suspicious gaze following Owen around the ranch and narrowing whenever Lily appeared in the same vicinity. They were careful to show no sign of their connection in public, not even the casual use of sign language that had become their habit. Yet despite the constraints, their love deepened. In their brief times together, they planned their future: the improvements Owen wanted to make to his small ranch house before bringing Lily there as his wife, the garden she would plant come summer, the life they would build together if the judge in Carson City could be persuaded to overturn her sentence. February passed in a blur of cold days and colder nights. March brought thaws and freezes in fickle alternation, the promise of spring appearing and retreating like a shy creature. By early April, the snow began to recede in earnest, revealing muddy ground beneath and swelling the creeks with runoff from the mountains. Owen began making more frequent trips to town, ostensibly for ranch supplies but really to check on the progress of his own property and to make arrangements for their departure. Each time he returned, he would find a way to slip Lily a note with updates on their plans. "House has new roof," one note read. "Garden plot cleared for you, bought a wagon," said another, "and a gentle mare for you to learn riding. 2 more weeks," a late April note promised. "Be ready." Lily prepared as best she could, setting aside the few possessions she had acquired during her time at the ranch: a second dress, the book of hand signs Owen had given her, a shawl Martha had passed on to her at Christmas. She kept them wrapped in a bundle beneath her bed, ready to be grabbed at a moment's notice. The opportunity they had been waiting for came in the first week of May. Jebediah Dawson announced at dinner that he would be traveling to Reno for a Cattlemen's Association meeting, taking Curtis with him. They would be gone for 5 days, more than enough time for Owen and Lily to reach Carson City and plead their case to the judge. The night before their planned departure, Owen met Lily in the hayloft, having climbed up from the outside to avoid being seen by the other ranch hands. Their conversation was a mixture of excitement and anxiety, hands flying as they finalized details. "I'll bring the wagon before dawn," Owen signed. "Wait behind the henhouse. Martha usually doesn't check on you until after breakfast." Lily nodded, then asked the question that had been troubling her. "What about Martha? She's been kind to me. I don't want to just disappear." Owen considered this, then signed. "Leave her a note. She can read, might understand." Lily agreed, though she worried about implicating Martha in their escape. Still, it seemed wrong to vanish without a word to the woman who had treated her with basic decency, if not warmth. As they prepared to part, Owen to make final preparations, Lily to write her note to Martha and try to get some sleep, Owen took her hands in his. "Tomorrow," he signed, "we begin our life together. Whatever happens with the judge, we face it together." Lily nodded, her heart too full for signs or words. They shared one last kiss in the shadowed hayloft, then parted, Owen slipping down the outside ladder, Lily making her way carefully back to the house. In her small room, Lily wrote a brief note to Martha, explaining that she was leaving with Owen, apologizing for any trouble this might cause, and thanking her for the kindnesses she had shown. She left it folded on her pillow, where Martha would be sure to find it after she was gone. Then she lay down fully dressed atop her blankets, too keyed up to sleep, waiting for the first hint of dawn that would signal the beginning of her new life. The hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. Lily's ears couldn't hear the night sounds of the ranch, but her other senses were heightened by anticipation, the feel of the rough blanket beneath her, the faint smell of wood smoke from the kitchen stove, the play of moonlight through her small window as clouds passed across the sky. Finally, the eastern horizon began to lighten. Lily rose, grabbed her small bundle of possessions, and slipped out the back door of the kitchen. The air was crisp with early morning chill, dew sparkling on the grass as she made her way to the henhouse. She waited in its shadow, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. What if something had gone wrong? What if Owen had been discovered preparing to leave? What if? Her anxious thoughts were interrupted by the sight of Owen driving a wagon around the bend in the road that led to the ranch. He pulled up near the henhouse, his face breaking into a smile when he saw her waiting. He jumped down and hurried to her side, taking her bundle and helping her up onto the seat. As Owen turned the wagon toward the road, Lily cast one last look at Dawson's ranch, the place that had been her prison for 6 months. Despite the hardships, she couldn't bring herself to hate it entirely, for it was here that she had found Owen, here that she had discovered a strength in herself she hadn't known she possessed. Owen glanced at her, reading her thoughts in her expression. He squeezed her hand briefly before returning his attention to driving. They had a long journey ahead, 15 miles to the town of Sweetwater Springs, then another 60 to Carson City over mountain roads still soft from the spring thaws. As the wagon rolled away from the ranch, the rising sun casting long shadows before them, Lily felt a sense of freedom unlike anything she had experienced since her arrest. Whatever challenges lay ahead, the judge's decision, building a life together on Owen's small ranch, navigating a world that often misunderstood her deafness, they would face them together, with the language of their hands and hearts to guide them. They reached Sweetwater Springs by mid-morning, stopping only long enough to water the horses and for Owen to purchase provisions for their journey. A few townspeople recognized him, nodding greetings, but no one questioned Lily's presence or their obvious travel preparations. By noon, they were on the road to Carson City, the wagon loaded with supplies and their hopes. The terrain grew more rugged as they approached the mountain passes, the road winding through pine forests and alongside streams swollen with snowmelt. They stopped for the night at a small way station that offered meals, basic lodging, and stables for travelers. Owen signed to Lily that they would present themselves as husband and wife, a small deception that would become truth soon enough. The proprietor, a weathered man with a gray beard, accepted Owen's explanation that his wife was deaf without comment, showing them to a small but clean room at the end of a short hallway. That night, alone together for the first time without fear of discovery, they lay side by side on the narrow bed, talking in sign language until exhaustion overcame them. They didn't cross the final boundary of intimacy, both agreeing without words to wait until they were properly married, but they slept entwined in each other's arms, Lily's head on Owen's chest, his arms protective around her. The next day dawned clear and warm, promising good travel weather. They set out early, Owen eager to reach Carson City before nightfall. The mountain roads were challenging, muddy in places, washed out in others, but the wagon was sturdy and the horses strong. As they traveled, Owen taught Lily to drive the wagon, guiding her hands on the reins, showing her how to communicate with the horses through subtle shifts in pressure. By afternoon, she was handling the team with growing confidence while Owen rested beside her, his proud smile warming her more than the May sunshine. They reached Carson City as the sun was setting. The territorial capital spread out before them in the valley, larger and more imposing than Sweetwater Springs, with brick buildings, boardwalks, and gas lamps being lit along the main streets. Owen directed the wagon to a modest hotel on a side street, one that catered to ranchers and other working people, rather than the politicians and businessmen who frequented the grander establishments near the capital. After securing a room again, presenting themselves as husband and wife, they ate a simple meal in the hotel dining room, both too tired from travel to seek out better accommodations. That night, as they prepared for sleep, Owen signed, "Tomorrow we see Judge Warren. He has a reputation for fairness. We tell him your story, the theft accusation, the lack of interpreter at your trial, everything." Lily nodded, anxiety creeping back into her heart. So much depended on this meeting, her freedom, their future together. Owen, seeing her worry, signed reassuringly, "Whatever happens, we're together now. Even if he can't overturn your sentence, we'll find another way. I won't let you go back to Dawson's." Lily's eyes filled with tears at his determination. She signed, "I love you," her hands forming the words that had become the center of her world. Owen signed back, "I love you too, always will." The next morning they dressed in their best clothes, Owen in a clean shirt and string tie, Lily in her good dress, her hair neatly arranged. They looked. Owen signed with approval, like a respectable young couple seeking the law's assistance, not like fugitives from justice. The territorial courthouse was an imposing stone building in the center of Carson City. Inside, the halls echoed with footsteps and voices Lily couldn't hear but could feel through the marble floor. Owen led her to a clerk's desk, explaining their situation and asking to see Judge Warren. The clerk, a thin man with spectacles, regarded them skeptically, but went to inquire if the judge would see them. He returned some minutes later and motioned for them to follow him down a hallway to a heavy wooden door. Judge Warren was not what Lily had expected. Rather than the stern, intimidating figure she had imagined, he was a man of medium height with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a beard streaked with gray. He looked up from his desk as they entered, gesturing for them to be seated in the chairs before him. For the next hour, Owen explained their situation, speaking for himself and signing simultaneously so that Lily could follow the conversation. He told the judge about Lily's conviction in Boston, about the lack of an interpreter at her trial, about the accusation by the employer's son that she maintained was false. He explained how she had been sent to Dawson's ranch as part of the prison labor program, and how they had fallen in love after he learned sign language to communicate with her. Judge Warren listened attentively, occasionally asking questions that Owen translated into sign for Lily. When Owen finished their story, the judge sat back in his chair, fingers steepled before him in thought. "What you're asking is irregular, Mr. Hayes," he said finally, speaking slowly enough that Lily could read his lips. "Miss Patterson was legally convicted and sentenced, however unfair the circumstances may seem to you. I don't have the authority to simply overturn a Massachusetts court's decision on a whim." Owen's face fell, but he nodded understanding. Lily felt tears threatening again, disappointment bitter in her throat. But then the judge continued, "However, I do have concerns about the procedural aspects of her trial. The failure to provide an interpreter for a deaf defendant raises serious questions of due process. I'd like to review Miss Patterson's case more thoroughly." Hope flickered to life again in Lily's chest. The judge hadn't dismissed their petition outright. "Return tomorrow afternoon," Judge Warren said. "I'll send telegrams to Boston today requesting the trial transcripts and information about Miss Patterson's conviction. In the meantime, Mr. Hayes, I expect you to remain in Carson City with Miss Patterson. No disappearing into the mountains, understood?" Owen nodded solemnly. "Yes, Your Honor." "We'll be here." The judge looked directly at Lily then, speaking clearly for her to read his lips. "Miss Patterson, if what you and Mr. Hayes have told me is true, a grave injustice may have been done to you. I cannot promise to overturn your conviction, but I can promise to examine your case with an open mind." Lily nodded, tears of gratitude filling her eyes. Even this chance was more than she had dared hope for. As they left the courthouse, Owen's face was a mixture of hope and caution. "Not a victory yet," he signed, "but not a defeat either. We wait." The next 24 hours were the longest of Lily's life. She and Owen remained in their hotel room for much of the time, venturing out only for meals and a brief visit to a general store where Owen purchased a simple silver band, just in case. He signed with a smile that made Lily's heart race. By the time they returned to the courthouse the following afternoon, Lily was a bundle of nerves. What if the judge had received negative reports from Boston? What if he decided to send her back to Dawson's Ranch or worse, to a territorial prison to complete her sentence? Judge Warren was waiting for them in his chambers, his expression unreadable as they entered. He gestured for them to sit, then shuffled through papers on his desk before looking up. "I received responses to my telegrams this morning," he said, speaking deliberately for Lily's benefit. "The Boston court confirms that Miss Patterson was convicted of theft based primarily on the testimony of her employer's son, with no physical evidence presented. They also confirm that no sign language interpreter was provided during the trial, as none was available in the court's jurisdiction." He paused, looking directly at Lily. "Miss Patterson, based on this information and my review of the relevant territorial statutes, I believe there are sufficient grounds to question the fairness of your trial. While I cannot overturn your conviction entirely, that would require action from the Massachusetts courts, I can and do hereby suspend the remainder of your sentence, conditional upon your good behavior while in Nevada territory." Lily stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. Owen, beside her, translated the judge's words into sign to ensure she understood fully. "In practical terms," Judge Warren continued, "this means you are no longer required to serve your labor sentence at Dawson's Ranch or any other location. You are free to live and work where you choose within the territory. Should you wish to fully clear your name, I would recommend petitioning the Massachusetts Supreme Court with the assistance of a lawyer versed in such appeals. That, however, would be a separate process from today's ruling. Owen signed the judge's words, his hands trembling with emotion. Lily covered her mouth with her hands, tears streaming down her face. Freedom, unexpected, miraculous freedom. "There is one more matter," the judge said, looking at Owen. "Mr. Hayes, you mentioned your intention to marry Miss Patterson. Is that still your wish?" "Yes, Your Honor," Owen replied without hesitation. "More than anything." "And you, Miss Patterson?" The judge looked at Lily. "Is it your wish to marry Mr. Hayes?" Lily nodded emphatically, then signed, yes, a gesture the judge seemed to recognize. "In that case," Judge Warren said with the first smile they had seen from him, "as a justice of this territory, I am authorized to perform civil marriages. If you wish, I could conduct the ceremony today before you leave Carson City." Owen translated this, his face lighting with joy as he looked at Lily in question. She nodded again, happiness bubbling up inside her like a spring. "We would be honored, Your Honor," Owen said formally, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. And so, in the judge's chambers with only his clerk and a courthouse janitor as witnesses, Lily Patterson and Owen Hayes were married on that May afternoon in 1876. The ceremony was brief but meaningful, the judge speaking slowly so Lily could read his lips, Owen signing the important parts to ensure she missed nothing. When they exchanged vows, Lily spoke with her hands while Owen spoke the words aloud, each promising to love, honor, and cherish the other for all their days. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Owen slipped the simple silver band onto Lily's finger, then kissed her with such tenderness that even the clerk, a man who had witnessed hundreds of civil ceremonies, had to wipe a tear from his eye. As they left the courthouse, legally married and with Lily's sentence suspended, the future stretched before them bright with possibility. They spent one more night in Carson City, this time truly as husband and wife. Their love consummated in the privacy of their hotel room with a tenderness and passion that transcended the need for words or signs. The journey back to Owen's ranch, now their ranch, took 2 days, the wagon laden with supplies they had purchased in Carson City for their new life together. When they finally crested the hill that overlooked the property, Owen stopped the wagon, wanting Lily to have her first proper view of her new home. It was a modest spread compared to Dawson's, a small but sturdy house nestled against a hillside, a barn and corral, several outbuildings, and about 50 acres of good grazing land with a creek running through it. Beyond this, Owen had grazing rights to several hundred acres of public land. It wasn't a fortune, but it was theirs, a place to build a life together. As they approached the house, Owen surprised Lily by halting the wagon, then coming around to her side. With a grin, he lifted her in his arms and carried her across the threshold of their home, following the tradition he had seen at other weddings. Inside, the house was simple but clean, with a main room that served as kitchen, dining, and living area, and 2 smaller rooms, one a bedroom, the other currently used for storage but with potential to become whatever they needed it to be. Owen had prepared as best he could for Lily's arrival, putting fresh linens on the bed, stocking the pantry with basics, even placing a vase of wildflowers on the table. That night, as they lay together in their own bed in their own home, Lily signed in the darkness, "I never thought I could be this happy, never thought I would have this." Owen pulled her closer, signing back, "This is just the beginning. Every day, I'll tell you I love you with my hands, with my eyes, with everything I am." And he did. Through the years that followed, as they built their ranch into a successful small operation, as they welcomed children who grew up fluent in both spoken English and sign language, As they faced the challenges and joys that life brought their way, Owen kept his promise. Every day, in the language of hands that he had learned for her, he spoke his love to Lily. And Lily, who had once been sent west as punishment, found in the vast Nevada landscape not a prison but a home, and in the gentle cowboy who had learned her language, a love that transcended all boundaries of sound and silence, of past and present, of what the world thought possible and what the heart knew to be true. In 1881, with the help of a Carson City lawyer recommended by Judge Warren, Lily's conviction was formally overturned by the Massachusetts Supreme Court. Her name finally, officially cleared. The news arrived in a telegram that Owen read to her with tears in his eyes, his hands signing the words as his voice spoke them. Justice delayed but not denied. You are free in name as well as fact. But the truth was, Lily had been free from the moment Owen Hayes had first formed the sign for friend, in the dawn light of a dairy barn, free in the way that matters most, free to love and be loved for exactly who she was. By their 10th anniversary, their small ranch had grown to include 100 acres of owned land, a herd of prime cattle, and a reputation for the finest horses in the territory. Their home had expanded too, with rooms added for their growing family, 3 children who moved effortlessly between the silent world of their mother and the hearing world of their father. On that anniversary, Owen gave Lily a special gift, a small silver charm in the shape of hands forming the sign for love. As he fastened it around her neck, he signed the words that had become the foundation of their life together. Every day, I speak love to you with my hands. Every day for the rest of our lives. And so he did, through all the seasons of their marriage, their hands speaking a language that had begun as a bridge between worlds and had become the poetry of their shared life, eloquent, enduring, and boundlessly rich with love.